for this letter to the Department of Justice Inspector General and others. This is the letter. This is the written form of this letter. This is a lot longer than I thought. And so we're going to continue on. And I stated, to here, continue through several instances, I kept my life goals. This is to the point of explaining what was going on, and the reason I'm using a video is it is known my entire everything I'm doing is monitored. My computers are still monitored. Um, keep breaking into my place. So I've recently been poisoned with a neurotoxin. One was under my foot, and it kept hammering it every single day for about 2 weeks. Uh, then caught one guy following me, and he administered it to my left calf. That took about 3 days, but they just kept hammering under the underside of my foot, right foot, to make it look like I had plantar fasciitis, which it wasn't because it would heal, and then before it, right when it tried to heal, it hit it again, and I keep proof of every time. Well, not every time I go to sleep because I'm not getting much sleep. Usually, I'm awakened within 2 hours of falling asleep, so I haven't really been able to sleep or dream, which is where I do most of my thinking outside of their control. The um, so just to let you know, this is going to be the same. So where I'm at now is back to where I was in Colorado. In Colorado, the year when I was living at Middle Creek Village, there is a pizza place and an individual named Cole, and then also the lady, one of the part-time persons who worked at Creek Village. I forgot her name. Um, she was also McRaven, and these persons libeled and defamed my name in that area. She was like, why was she upset with me? Another individual was Cole, who used to be an employee at Yeti's Grind downtown, downtown Vail, Colorado. And we were really getting along really cool. Everything was good to go. And we were like, hey, dude, can we do some business, whatever? And then the next thing I know, he's all upset with me, like I did something. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? And it was the day before, a couple days before, I was in an argument with some, well, I'm sorry, man, one dude was upset that he was playing games and I was calling him out. And then I figured that guy was the guy had then you, because it started to libel my name, and so I was saying, well, I thought that was the person who had created this rift between us. Now I realize it was actually McRaven and his SEALs because they were there in Vail. Also, the person, she was part time. She lives there. She's an older lady. Her son was a SEAL at Middle Creek Village, not at SEAL at Middle Creek Village, but her son was a SEAL, and she actually had this horrible hate for me for whatever reason, and it was because of once again another libel defamation by McRaven. And then while I was there, pizza place down the road. I'm trying to find the name of it real quick. I actually had to talk to the owner of the pizza place. I'm not even sure if it's still there. It was Local Joe's Pizza. I was having this guy anytime I'd call to have the pizza delivered. It was always he was just that person was very much an IEAP personality. Uh, but now I realized once again it was McRaven as well. And I actually had to talk to the owner. I'm like, dude, what's going on? This is not cool. Why is this dude doing this? I'm getting cold pizzas, he's being a jerk. I've never done anything to this guy. It was McRaven. I also now realize by following how the structure works, their tax system, while I was in Vail, the reason I ended up leaving Vail is because they had come into my place, and you can, if someone's asleep, you do a subconscious manipulation if you're not conscious of something was going on. This is the same thing they tried to do while I was in uh, Grand Junction, but I'll get to that at a later point. So that's the main reason I actually went on the road and screwed up my credit, doing a lot of going before, making a lot of mistakes that I would normally have made. It was them harassing me, and I did not realize this. And you're gonna have to get with the Department of Defense because those right now those records are going to be either top secret SCI, and they're probably trying to get rid of them, or it's going to be done through Academy, and they're probably trying to hide their involvement as well, because the unit, as Delta Force is known, is a self-contained position, self-contained. That bureau isn't, but that's why Academy has probably stood up to help Dev Bureau, or actually, its first main reason was stood up was to create um, a mirror image of what the SEALs' capabilities are inside, but as a private military contractor. Now it has some uses, as we'll see with what Putin does. But Putin got that idea from what was going on with Academy, or Blackwater, as it's better known as. And they, under the guise, they would train some of the SEALs teams, and then they would do follow-ons and work with. So there was always this, it was mirror imaging of the capabilities. That was the purpose of it, as I stated a second ago. Now, as I'm in Vail, I'm in my, this is Vail, Colorado. I was actually in Vail, Colorado, and at Middle Creek Village in Vail, Colorado, and my head was always cloudy. I could always having a tough time. Now I understand what it was. Is they, when you are sleeping, doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're sleeping, someone's, because they come in. It's the training. The way what I've been able to discern is they come into your space while you're sleeping. And then they'll wake you up. That's their main thing, is they'll sit there, do whatever they do, plant their plants, their bugs, whatever, do the little whisper, subconscious, so it screws up your mind. Um, these are known psychological tactics to uh, adjust the person's conscious thinking using unconscious means. So they've been harassing me. And said first it was in the military, but then as a civilian. And his argument was, well, you put the EO in, you ruined this guy's career. Well, actually, McRaven ruined his career, because if he just left me alone and I had failed on my own, it'd be a different story. But they went out of their way to screw up my career. And then McRaven has placed in a lot of white nationalists and uh, uh, basically just really Southern style bigots within the officer corps of the military. There's some in the Army as well, but they're after the Vietnam War, veteran after the Vietnam War, the Army made structural changes to itself because of just the horrific impacts of such people who are like McRaven and their horrible style of leadership. Um, and also, the Dominionists knew this was going on in the Army, and they went out of their way to try to counteract it within the Navy. It's kind of like how the samurai moved into being bureaucrats, and a lot of the old samurai lines went into the Navy after World War II. So, but in this case, we're looking at not samurai, we're looking at white nationalists and neo-fascists. So they're infiltrating my space. They're stealing. I'm writing my stuff, and it's I remember because I remember so clearly, like so much clearly, but always was having my mind was just always clouded, and I just didn't understand. I just like, why is my mind clouded? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense until now, of course. So I go on the road, as is stated in my DOD Inspector General's complaint, figuring there's something I want to do. I figure I'll just get on the road and try it, figure out. One of the things is all right. Um, I would try and one of the things was doing was we're trying to do is day trading. Now, as stated in the written part, Admiral Stavridis, the Carlyle Group, the large majors don't need to use much movements uh, to move a point one. To move, because I was only doing 1 point moves. And so I get going and I'm thinking, and I'm like, I never am bad at something this simple for this long. And granted, day trading is really not that simple, but the systems I was using, I could see pattern recognition is what I do. And, I was on the math team as a kid. I'm not your average idiot, so to speak. And and then I've also always been STEM and stuff like that. But I would be studying something and I would just have a difficult time. All of a sudden, I saw that, and then tracking the patterns before knowing, because the whole time I did not know. And when I did know, and then I look back at the same patterns, I'm like, okay, this is the exact same pattern that happened here at point B was happening at point A. Because if you look at it in a linear timeline, with point A being in the past, and point B, or point point A being the past, point B being in the past present, and then point C is where we're at today, the ABC timeline, where A would be Vale, and up to getting out of the military, then A um, A to B would be from Vale to Grand Junction at the time, and then B to C is the time where they have pushed me out of Grand Junction to where I'm at now. Right now, I'm located in Florida, but it's only temporary because I have not changed my driver's license. The so 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 I get on the road thinking I'm just thinking, okay, it's me. I'm having these problems. So I just get on the right my motorcycle, figure this out. So let's talk about, and this is still part before I get you on the road. Um, Part of what happened in now I'll write that part into us. There's one of the places where multiple places where I couldn't get a job. A place in two of them were very obvious. I thought it was at the time one of them I thought was Rob. The first one of the first ones I knew it was the Navy. The other one I thought it was Full Sail through Rob Kroll, but not Full Sail itself, but Rob Kroll and Vineski. But it was actually just Rob Kroll, Vineski, and McRaven countering me getting a job, especially when after I got this um, at a ad agency in downtown Orlando. That they end up using my theory is again stealing that. You have to put in and then hiring this other person. But then I saw once again where it was like then he went off and started teaching at the university, the entrepreneurship and everything else. I was like, he just mirrored me. It's like, what the hell's going on? Um, and that's one of those harder to the not getting the job part, but the part, but it's what these are consistent inconsistencies throughout my life. And so back to Vale. So I go on the road. There's a situation, as I stated, within every time I would try to do something, I'm learning, I'm studying, I'm putting, I just seem to keep getting hammered with this situation. I'm like, why is I'm having these problems? Um, what I now know is a Carlisle group. No, because I've seen it. There was, and I'll explain that. When I was in, um, I was still having problems with the day trading. I didn't understand why I was having problems with the day trading. So I just kept going and figured I'll just figure it out on the road. Maybe it was just because I wasn't hard enough or I didn't sink or swim or some kind of thing. What it ends up being actually the problem is when you do something to get well, you have to create a process and a system, and every time I would get that process and system, I would be attacked. Since before it was it was below conscious knowledge, but now I know what the conscious knowledge is, so it's not subconscious knowledge, so it's obvious, and then I can take these same patterns that I've learned, and this was all while I was in Grand Junction, and then apply them to what was the same states that I was in. Was I in the same states? Where was I having the exact same problems at points A or B? And I can definitively say yes. Um, I mean, at point A, and I can definitively say yes because I was looking at the situation from point B, and then find totally, and then at point C, same things were going on at point B. So definitively, so it was a 66% chance on for three different positions of that happening within the same. So it was the same thing going on. It was greater than 66, but it was twice. It was the exact same states. It makes sense. Um, so as I said, I know right now this is all being recorded. They're going to go running ahead, which would be their normal particular pattern, and then immediately start doing a negative um, sabotage event. I noticed also there's a point where, okay, for instance, when I masturbate. I didn't used to masturbate a lot, but then I guess all this it I started having a trigger position, and this morning I had a trigger event, and I kind of stopped because I can usually just stop. I don't really, it's not my thing really, but I had gotten into a bad habit of it, and I'm like, okay. So there was a triggering event, and then there's something else that told me that there was a sabotage event coming on. Because what McRaven was doing was trying to make it like a porn thing for the gay people, and then also constantly keeping me disattached. Like I haven't been any, even being any type of woman or anything, they immediately are countering. There's, um, I don't, any, they've kept me from making friends with anyone over the last 20 years. It's like a rat in a cage. It drives them, they couldn't break me. So they figured, well, we'll just use them, and then they start throwing a bunch of seals. We'll just train them on coming in and interfering with his life and violating his civil rights and his constitutional rights. And I know this fact because the last time they did this is when I was looking for a lawyer. I was speaking to this lady, awesome person. I'll have that on the in the complaint, her name. And we're at in Daytona, we're at a bar, and she's terrified. Like this, there's palpable fear in her eyes. She was looking for her husband. We were just hanging out, and I went, okay, they got to her. And then later that night, they tried to have some pedophile get near me because everything's being videotaped and it's being put out onto the internet, and everything is illegal because I have never allowed and will not allow my my name without my control over it. So guarantee you that's what's happening at the exact same time. See, it's 14th. So today is the 26th. So that's what's going to be put out today because the masturbation thing. And I was reading the report. So what? I'm a freaking 50-year-old man. You shouldn't be in my phone anyways. You shouldn't be in my privacy anyways. What they'll do is they'll create an emotional volumetric position, make a lot of noise, and so this is what Trump does. And then people will remember the emotion, not the logic. But they got to keep hammering to get that dopamine. So continuing on, so it's still going through Vail. Situation is I get down to Colorado, it's up in Washington, went down the East Coast, um, met a different couple people. You know how it goes when you're traveling around. Probably the whole time I was being followed, actually was. I now know I was being followed. Um, so I get to LA, meet an old acquaintance that I thought, I only really knew her very lightly. And she immediately does, I had no idea with what this, that's Jana Lewis, Esquire, and her friend Holly Adams. And this is where it gets really strange is I'm just trying to figure out, I figured, okay, not figured, but the child self of Miss Lewis, because I can sit there and see all three of her personalities as she was splitting. Um, uh, I could see that in real time. I could hear her in real time. This was what makes this whole situation kind of strange for most people, is I could hear and see the personalities of Miss Lewis. As I said, they were split into three different personalities: Jana, and Jan was the Jana. Miss Lewis was the adult superego. Jana is the child, heart self, but who's completely repressed. And Jan was like the id, who was the protector, who would get in a fight, whatever. And then Jana would direct all of this, trying to tell her dad what was going on by being just an absolute shite. But there is the secondary meme entity that these exist within Jana Lewis, and then she had to always be, well, she'd have to, but she was always under the influence, and that's, she was going to be narcissistic anyways, but she was definitely more narcissistic while she was always under the influence. What narcotics, I have no idea of, but it wasn't just ecstasy. I think I don't know what it was. To be honest with you, I don't know what she was on, but she was on it all the time. And that's by her own admission at the time. So I get down there, and she immediately does these narcissists or cluster bees will do micro tests. And I'm just like, hey, dude, what's up, dude? And then she's trying, and she meet me here, but then doesn't give me the directions, and then does this, and then, oh, instead of meet me, finds out where I'm at, and tries, it's just all this crazy things where a normal person would have been like, hey, dude, we're right out here. Why don't you meet up here? Yeah, dude, no problems, bro. That's what a true person does, but he's a narcissist. Um, they try to see how agreeable you are, and I'm just like, hey, dude, hey, dude, what's up? Um, and they have to make the person who's actually likable seem unlikable, so that way they are likable. It's that dichotomy thing. That's why I called it externalized antagonistic personality. They'll antagonize until you get angry, and then they'll go, ooh, see, there was one One who actually literally said, "Oh, there he is," because he was antagonized until I got angry. But that was what was that dude? It was a black and white uh, Darnell. This guy named Darnell. While I was in Grand Junction, he pretty much had full psychopathic traits. But continuing on, so I meet Mr. Lewis. That's the situation. There is the main. I told her I was like I didn't understand. I figured it was just because she had liked me, and I was in my walkabout in my 20s when I knew her. So I was like, okay, she's just upset, broken heart, blah blah blah, trying to get me back, and I did have no idea. It's like, all right, oh cool. Even said it to some of the people around. It's like, hey, okay, I usually the one that takes off. I'll stick it out this time. But that's what that was the whole setup is what she was doing. She was just creating a triangulation. And there's this one on the substation.one Facebook page where there's one video where she's wearing this shirt called where it says spiritual gangster. That's what the whole thing is trying to because like my spirituality is what I is me. I just do what I do, because I've always been trying to figure shit out. Mostly out of just curiosity, but I'm not one of those, oh, you gotta be pure and all yeah, fuck yeah. I'm just it's you are who you are. If it's gonna be, it's gonna be. Um, it's very much a First Amendment kind of person. What you do as how you find whatever you believe is up to you, and so it shouldn't be anybody else's business. And so, and most like to view it as philosophy, actually, just what's spirituality is philosophy, type of philosophy, and metaphysics. Um, so I had studied over the years different logic systems and things like that. I was looking at Kurt Gödel's logic, and I taught myself different types of logic, trying to figure out, trying to understand it better, and it's way over my head. But you know what, you don't know what you don't know unless you go diving into the crazy pool. So yeah, I drove into the crazy pool. That was my thing. Um, but however, in the years when I was younger, I did what's called a Jungian conjunction of the opposites and unus mentalis. The only way I can explain it is like the world slows down. There's one Star Trek movie, I think it was a movie. They had talking about metaphysics. It was like the younglings had left the planet, and I don't know which one it was. It was the Next Generation movie. It showed this butterfly, and it slowed down. That's kind of like exactly how the world looked as you're going through um, the conjunction of the opposites. So I see things very, very, very fast, but it's basically when you say a person's in flow, they're in state of flow. They can see the ball. Uh, a batter can see the ball and see it just moves like it's in slow motion. Well, that's in state of flow. So, but to me, that became my normal at a lot of times, especially under stress or anything. And I also kind of got into that from when I was wrestling in high school. That was the first time I initiated that without realizing it. And then it was initiated again in my early 20s um, uh, from studying philosophy and all that. So the SEALs can't say that they trained me to do this. This is something I had innate to me going into the military. Because that's the other thing. Psychopaths tend to say, "Well, we did this to you. We're the ones who know you don't know anything of it." That's McRaven. She's not gonna say it that way, but he's gonna try to imply it that way because they're just hyper emotional. It's kind of hilarious. The cluster bees, they're all over there trying to say I'm not emotional. They're the opposite day. They're extremely emotional. So the it's the reason they do everything they do because they can't stand. They're so neurotic. That's one thing I noticed about the modern SEALs is like, oh, you guys are so neurotic compared to Green Berets. We're just usually chill. But all his SEALs are just so neurotic, and that's a lot to do with McRaven keeping them fucking wound up, especially in where that's why guys who go to damn neck are not so neurotic. It's quite hilarious. So the thing that was interesting about is with Miss Lewis is so I'm leaving. I'm going okay. I put on the videos. Will explain the on my YouTube page. It goes through that. I've documented everything. It'll explain everything a little bit better, and then the videos should have been pulled from Jana Lewis's phone when she was arrested, or if she wasn't arrested, well, she was arrested because um, she ended up raping her, Holly Adams, and Ty ended up raping Miss Madison Orange, um, which is a sad story in and of itself. But so what happened is we got what's called a mind lock. So I hear her music, and because I can hear in her music the three different personalities like fighting it out, and she would have conversations. So every week, I'm trying to drive across country, listening to it, and then I get into this metaphysical mind lock. So I would have this is the part. It's going to sound weird, but they because I knew at some part, I knew it's like somebody's watching this on the other end, and somebody's watching me, and they can't believe what's going on. But I would know what her emotion set was on all the way across the country, and so it couldn't be dismissed as me just losing my mind because I would do something, and there's an observer on the other end, and I'm moving east most of the time as this is happening. And Holly Adams and the drug dealer Ty Briscoe are trying to break the lock. I'm trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Why is she attacking me? And that's the main reason I kept doing this. 'Cause I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I did nothing to you or to her. That's what I said to you. I was like, I haven't done anything to you. Why are you attacking me? And but figured it out. And but it was also a combination of her attacking me as well as um, McRaven and the SEAL admirals that were in active duty attacking me as well, violating the Hatch Act and violating my civil and uh, constitutional rights and the rights to privacy. And then also with the Carlisle group, they were hit my positions anytime, so I was always having problems. Plus, clouded mind of the constant somebody coming in. Anytime somebody's, if you're asleep, you always, even if you don't realize it, if somebody comes near you in your space, you're going to be aware of it. Now, you might not all wake up, and then the SEALs perfected it over time. Ghost recon, how to do that, how to get near somebody, how to implant subconscious uh, ideas into their head. Uh, so this is part of their standard operating procedure, standard training. All of this was derived by me. Never knew that part of it. That's the reason he did not. He kept trying. McRaven tried to get me out of the military because I would be too good at it. It wasn't because I'd be not. McRaven psychopaths do not get rid of people who are bad. I mean, they attack the people who are actually good at something. And to a normal person, that seems counterintuitive. But what happens is the psychopath mimics the person who has ability, and then they destroy that person, as stated, because they can't have the mimic have the in their minds they can't have the mimic be alive or be capable because then how it means that they don't have their ability, they can't mimic their ability, so that's why they destroy the target. So as we're going through this, as situation happens, So this takes about a year of me going across country, losing my absolute mind, trying to figure this out, and let's see here. Um, Structure of split soul. And this is where I developed my system, my theory of what the heck's going on. Like, this is the average person. Well, this person's supposed to be like masculine and this is feminine. Because it was all externalized. I was following the language, listening to her music, coming and hearing the different parts. So I go across country, come all the way back to Colorado. I still haven't gotten this trading thing in. I sure as hell don't have enough constant bandwidth because they take up they literally are a mind virus. And unless you've been on the inside of one of these situations, it is hard. You can't explain it to somebody. But what it does is it does, uh, because now we know that it inflames the amygdala, there is a physical action. So it's a physical assault, and it inflames the amygdala, squeezes the pineal gland, and you're just in this psychic wackadoo situation. So I'm getting double hammered by both uh, the SEALs and then getting hammered by Jana, and they're probably looking at all of this and trying to like, wow, this is. So I get to um, Grand Junction, and uh, now I also know they purposely sent my paperwork for me getting continuing my disability to the wrong place, whatever. Ended up being homeless after that. Um, so working, had to wait about 6 months to get that through. I got it through. That was mostly McRaven. Once again, trying to get it just enough to play in this game. He has access to my HIPAA records, which is why does an admiral have access to my HIPAA records? Why does a not even an active duty admiral? Why do the active duty admirals have access to my VA records, my private civilian records? But from what I've been able to gather is they've had this access, and this is how they would sit there and train these SEALs. They would find veterans, and they would just hammer them, and they would also do this to uh, people on shipboard. Now the part about shipboard is if there was somebody that looked like they were going to be up and coming and whatever, and the family didn't like that, they would go and attack them. There was this one Hispanic kid who really, apparently by all measures, was a really cool dude. Got an injury, which is more than likely them attacking him while he was going through SEAL training. His dad was a former Navy, and then he ended up committing suicide. A lot of these suicides that are going on are actually the SEALs actually attacking these kids and driving them crazy, practicing on them. Um, this is also the same thing they did to Admiral Borba, as in the other complaint sent to the Department of Defense Inspector General. So I get back to Colorado and finally was able to get a place. Little did I know, well, actually, I did figure out almost immediately. Um, there was a active duty SEAL as he was on his way to San Diego. And so before I get the place, I got the place, and then still fighting Jana and Holly Adams through the mind. It was just like this constant mind fuck. Um, the was an, first, so I go to LA and just to try to like, what's going on, dude? Just talk to me like a human being. What the, chick doesn't know how to communicate at all, and just like what's just to stop it and then get into the and try to break the rumination patterns and try to just like because the whole idea is they want you to stay in confusion and the mind starts to implode onto itself. And so as the harder you try to find an answer, the less get the more they pull away, the less they give you an answer. So that way you go insane. And they do this on purpose. Every because the main reason I did that is that I knew uh, Miss Lewis is old, semi-old money, second or third generation money, and my mother and I come from a much longer tail family of money, of power, and so old money, even though even though we're middle class to an American, old money has nothing to do with money. It's the a lot of it is how you think and how you, and also my nanny or grandma, she was my nanny. Before my mother allowed black African American into the family, she maintained her aristocratic bearing. But once my sister-in-law, got near the family, my mother then reverted to the abuse cycle that was going on when she was younger, where all the women were attacking my grandfather, and so she went into that abuse cycle, and she did that to her kids. My sister-in-law attacked um, myself and my sister, and my mother started to lose her aristocratic bearing, and she started to attack us as well. So, but that's a whole other story. So I was always, and I knew that I didn't want to quote marry my mother, so I was always kind of very careful about how I got close to anyone. So I was looking. So that's the main reason I was mostly willing to deal. The two reasons I was dealing with Miss Lewis is because you don't find a middle classer, an old money person hanging out with the middle class very often. So I was just like, okay, maybe I'll figure out my mom. Oh yeah, I did to a T. Um, she, and so we're back to I'm out of that sidebar. Went to LA to get this situation worked out. Going, what the hell's going on? And Mr. Briscoe. Now, Jenna Lewis was doing drugs every single day. She was doing so much that she was able to. She was probably moving like, and then she was getting for free and whatever. She's constantly fucked up. And she was a drug addict probably since high school. We're about the same age. She's like 50 years old, but she was a functional drug addict. Plus, she had so much money. Um, she didn't have to. She wasn't. It wasn't for her money. It wasn't for her dad. Her and her mom ended up actually killing her dad. That's what the Janice self told me. And when I confronted Miss Lewis, part of her, she confirmed that because once Jana got out of high school, got through college, her dad was going to divorce her mom. There's no way any man could live through that type of hell for 30 years consistently because her mom was um, using their nanny to have sex parties and getting all fucked up while he was going off doing whatever he was doing high level. And so, it's called a couple whipsawing, which is we'll go back and forth really quick, which snaps your amygdala. And then he used to have a plane to fly, I guess, to get away from everything. And they had fucked his head up so bad and probably missed something and he ended up crashing. And but they did that on purpose. So they put so much pressure on his mind that he made a mistake. And that's the thing. That's the way that they kill, and they do it on purpose. And that's part of what the Navy SEALs do. Useful tactics. Don't get me wrong, from a geopolitical perspective, but when it's not contained, within our laws, and it's being used against civilians and against people, uh, it's not good. And that's what Academy and the SEALs are doing to our population, because they're, especially the white, and then McRaven put a lot of white nationalists into the SEALs. So I'm figuring this situation out. I'm back in. This is where at point B now. I'm back, and I'm in um, Grand Junction. Finally, get a crappy little place, and the so Ty sends one chick. So goes two doors down for me. All of this information you're going to get from uh, which people were in where. Uh, well, before that, before that even happened, so I'm getting this place. There was this guy who was a 75th Ranger. He was living, I think it was like 210 or 220. And then his girlfriend, or his wife, sorry, um, she's highly narcissistic apparently, and she scares the living shit out of my next door neighbor, a young chick in high school. I mean college. We were cool, we're vibing right. Um, she's antagonizing me. Um, I'm just like, what feels wrong. It takes this chick next to me is absolutely terrified of me. The 75th Ranger moves out. So I figured it was kind of cool. Like, hey, you're 75th Ranger, dude. All right, we can sit there, drink some beers. And finally, sit down, and have conversation and chill with somebody, whatever. But at the time, I didn't know. Then he moves out really quick. And I remember once they're moving out, she's looking over me, just completely quizzically surprised. And I'm thinking, like, why are you moving out? What is up? What is something? And then this young girl's scared out of her mind. She ends up moving out. I'm trying to move to another place, but I didn't. I realized it, and then my head's going crazier. I'm getting attacked. Then Briscoe sends a young chick, to actually kill me. That was her first thing. But whatever. I was able to end up making friends with her because she's like probably not a bad person. She can't. She's more bipolar, not bipolar. She's still cluster B, but borderline. And then you have a chick beneath me who was definitely cluster B. Her doctor said she was a cluster B, so I was studying her, trying to figure out her patterns. So I'm getting attacked by this crazy chick. And then and then the uh, gangs are trying to figure out where I'm at, kill me because of Miss Lewis and Holly. Then they're trying to steal an idea. I was like, hey, dude, we can trade. Because my master's is entertainment business. And I'm looking at it like, hey, dude, you're in this house thing. I see it. Got all this networks. I see an awesome opportunity. Unfortunately, the way they wanted to do it was stupid. I never told them exactly how it was going to be done. Um, Holly tried to show her. Um, anyways, so I'm in Grand Junction. So one chick comes in, supposed to kill me. Now at the time there was a Navy SEAL that was living in the place on purpose. He was observing. I realized he was a SEAL because I could usually see them. Um, and also at the time, this Brandon Anelio, the guy who owns Substation ONE or Substation One, uh, Ty sent him to Mexico, and they had to send the SEALs to pick him up and bring him back. They brought him back, and then he ended up going down there, but staying for a wee bit, mostly to keep this gaslight going. And this is where I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure what happened is that that's when they started to make like this because of my networks. um, some reality TV show or something. I think um, because it was so obvious something was going on, McRaven had to find a way to cover the fact that they were violating my rights. So I get a so I'm going through this once again. It's just craziness. Um, Trying everything I can to finally break the mind lock between myself and Jana. Get a little help. Uh, I had to go to um, a meditation retreat. I'm in the meditation retreat, and they send this dude, just this psychopath, to anywhere a psychopath is. These guys are just like this one weird ass mind. But it was getting bad. Gosh, it was getting bad. But so while I was in Grand Junction, that would happen. But while I was in Grand Junction, what I noticed is I started to pay attention to the attacks. The person who was helping them is several people. There's, and I'll leave those directly as individuals because the story gets so hard to explain the story because it's such a mess. And that's the whole idea is they want you so frazzled, it's like you don't want to talk about it because it's it brings up such negatives into your body. They get into your spinal system, they get into your nervous system, so you don't have a positive recall about the situation. Uh, the Mesa County District Attorney was part of it. Situation. The um, there's I go to the gym, I'd be harassed. The night guy, the guy who if I go, I usually would go at evenings, and the guy in the gym, he knew he would just sit there, laugh. That he didn't, like everyone, people would deliver me food. They would know. Oh, nice computer screen. What the fuck? Um, the was Go to the coffee shop. I think they ended up buying that coffee shop. The young gal that was there, I think was dating McRaven. Um, we go to Verizon, the general manager, the Verizon store in Grand Junction, the general manager had been in, wasn't now an agent of McRaven, making my phone all hacked. Um, so they're doing all these things, and how do I know also um, my about the Carlisle group is because I would sit there and they told me it's so hard. Some of this sounds so out. That's the thing. A lot of it's so far out there. But larger institutions can move the trade 4, 5, even 10 points without a problem. And it wasn't just the Carlisle group; it was the Blackstone, all of them. Especially after I had um, uh, gone into the contract with Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, which I kind of understand. But these are so I would sit there and I'd see a position, I'd put it on, and because my screen, and then Black Americans would be on the exact same thing, trying to think, well, because McRaven's telling them, you see what his thing, what he was doing was he was loading up the positions, and then they would strike those positions, and they were taking their money, and they were just laughing at everybody, and I had to say, you guys need to quit this because they're stealing your money, they're doing this on purpose, they're taking you out, and then they brought in Jay Z. First, they brought in the Kardashians because they're the cultural thing to control black folks. That didn't work 'cause I don't like them. And they brought in Jay Z. Well, all black people think the same. I'm Jamaican American, and I grew up in in the burbs, so I drove around European Americans. If you don't, if you act differently than a normal European American, I'm going to know that something's freaking weird. And I really don't like hanging out with Black Americans. I don't like to be honest with you, I don't like their culture. A lot of their culture is very backstabby, very violent, um, and it's just yeah, and they do things that they've been trained over so many generations to be self-destructive, and that's been done on purpose. uh, Everything I was doing was specifically knowing that those behaviors were going to get me nowhere. That emulating their behaviors would get me nowhere. Um, so as I said, also other persons involved were Black Rock, Cap Rock, Century 21. As I was constantly trying to leave the place I was in for over a year, the real estate agent kept steering me, which is highly illegal. The owner then, when SOCOM was finally they beginning of the SOCOM, there was a point where General Milley went to Congress and he said, "I want to, he wants to know what's about this whole white rage." That was in response to what was going on with me as it was being transmitted. Um, Finally, SOCOM sent some observers, and as soon as SOCOM sent some observers, the owner, McRaven, then got with the owner, and they had me removed. And then this was for December of last year, and then I was trying to just go to different places, still trying to do the whole um, trading thing because $3 grand a month you can't get anything really, and working, and I'm not going to give up. In, when you're constantly being harassed, you haven't worked for years, you don't have a job history anymore. It's like impossible to get a job. And two, he even stated it, well, how he states it. They sent, he said, "I'm going to make you homeless" by sending a homeless guy by me, and he's walking by, and I'm keeping notes. I'm writing all this down as it's happening. And he even said, if I'm going to be called crazy, I put it most of everything on my Facebook page because I was like, well, if I'm going to be crazy, then fine, I'm crazy, and I'm just going to document everything out in the public as a crazy person. I'm good with it. Um, so purposely made me homeless. Um, Good, and then I went to go get a car. It's like, okay, I'll just go get a car. I couldn't get, even with, you could see their look in their faces like, we can't get you a car. Even though your credit's not that great, you should still be able to get a car. They were saying at one point it was, okay, a $20,000 car. They wanted me to put almost, it was like 24,000 for the car. They wanted me to put 20,000 down. That's nonsensical no matter where you're at. And I did not have like a 300 or zero credit score. So it's just pure BS. Now I could have gotten a motorcycle, but I wasn't going to go on the payments. And that was because they were trying to funnel me to having a motorcycle, and then I would do, because they're trying, the whole thing was going to funnel me. We tell you what to do, and so because the whole goal of this whole situation is I would take out Trump, because they realized, okay, we could say keep Trump, but what they started getting upset was I started not just taking out Trump. I said I went after the whole conspiracy that the white nationalists have been doing to the entire country for decades. Trump is just a symptom, not the disease. And one of the things, and where I stated the Democratic Party owes me 1.2 million is I said, okay, willing to do this, not because I've never been a registered Democrat. I've either been independent or I've been a Republican because I've always was a business person. I always was, my dad was an entrepreneur. Uh, to me, entrepreneurs were like my quote heroes. You're like, oh, to be an entrepreneur, yeah, work hard, save and invest, yeah, entrepreneur, you know, that's the American thing, Yeah, and it's not, it's hard. It's there aren't many that many because it's so difficult. And to be a capitalist, you know, master of the universe, controller, seer of my ship, kind of thing. And so that was always my goal. Was never to be, full. Nothing wrong, worker bee, but it was always going to be an entrepreneur. It's not for everyone. It's not for most people. Most 98% fail for a good reason. And I was having difficulties not because of my own person, but because I was not. Because entrepreneurship, you must grow or you die, and it's hard to grow when every time you do something, the growth, someone's in your private life, subconsciously fucking you up. Um, oh yeah. So, anyways, it's so I couldn't get a place. They're stealing my notebooks. Um, Both in metaphysics. They're stealing my notebooks for paper, like how to buy on different things within real estate, tactics with real estate. Uh, like right now, this is being recorded and it's probably put online. Uh, so all of this is what's going on. I know it's hard to explain, hard to understand, but you have to. Everything in evidence is everything on my YouTube page, and anything from December through to present as part of evidence of what's going on, as well as you have to contact the Department of Defense because of the violation of the Hatch Act by the Navy SEALs, the Admiralty of the Navy SEALs, and Mr. McRaven and um, Mr. Prince. Their main thing is as soon as I make independent capital, as Queen Elizabeth's sovereign champion, the full power of the British Empire becomes to my hands until I've restored the Constitution and the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta restoration is when Prince or King Charles III um, finishes the conference of title Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth had conferred upon me in exchange for my intellectual property. He won't do so because, well, he's just being a bigot. He doesn't. He's also upset that told him that I also exposed the situation that was going on between Diana himself and his wife and how they were attacking Diana and using the paparazzi, and they essentially assassinated her. And in many ways, I can understand that, but I don't care. Um, yeah, as I stated in the written part of this, I don't need them as far as make money. my country had followed its law, I wouldn't need them. So still don't need them. But I was willing, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. This was just like, well, got an opportunity. I'll see what happens with it. It's typical, being a typical American. Um, the Constitution, because the President of the United States stepped foot onto these as his agent, is where another way of saying his agent stepped onto the floor of the Senate and the House. By that, as an insurrection, his agents have been convicted as insurrectionists since they went there on his, which we now have, which we're waiting for the courts to prove, and because they went there on his direction, on the former president's direction, the Constitution is considered null and void because its statement the executive branch is now over the legislative branch, and this is a symptom, not a disease. The Congress, by not physically enforcing its subpoenas, also gave up its power. That's during the January 6th commission. They should have physically brought in Mark Meadows, physically brought in Steve Bannon, put him in jail beneath the Congress, reestablish the power of the people when it comes to constitutional matters. And then he could have then appealed to the court system after the people had brought him in, booked him, and did the whole nine for violating their subpoena. Instead, they kicked it over to the executive branch, which was not what they should have done, in keeping with the three the structure of our government. That's the other thing is, well, you'll figure that out. And so and also because Mitch McConnell did not convict, not convict and remove the president, because there's one thing that they have to do, which is defend the Constitution. By not convicting and removing the former president, they were in absentia of their oath of office. All those Republicans who, out of fear, put their own personal safety over their oath and over the Constitution, that the former president off. The Constitution technically is null and void until uh, the people reestablish its dominance, its precedent. In order to reestablish that precedent, all or some of the members who aided and abetted in the insurrection by not voting to impeach and voting to remove, because the president himself did an insurrection, and they are on the record. Some of them are on the record of saying they were they knew that it was an insurrection, but then voted to not remove or impeach because they were part of the insurrection. Now, because you can't remove them all because there are so many of them, but we have to remove some of them to reestablish the sanctity of the Constitution and to stop this decades long march to authoritarianism. Anytime I finally got people's ear, McRaven would then immediately sabotage it. So, like I said, the whole masturbation thing this morning, I'm putting it in there. It's kind of embarrassing, but it's actually useful. Um, it's probably already out there wherever they're doing this. So me saying it, me knowing, because I was like, okay, I had been in a specific situation where it was a conscious decision that I was certain things, and then within the last week, 2 weeks, I've gone against that, and I'm like, okay, why did I go against that? Interesting. All right, so this is so I now know this has been a if-then situation. So they're doing this. All right, so I now know next time that happens, I know what to do. And then, and as I said, then within the as within the written part, that's getting the gays all worked up in their weirdo shitometers because they're trying to make the associations. One thing that the cluster B is really good at is creating false associations, trying to associate me with the gays. And I really, quite honest with you, my own thing was I said, it's like, I don't care if you're gay, that's your thing. You know, if you can do the job, you can do the job. Not my problem. A lot of gay men are very psychopathic. And personally, the transvestites are what would be considered a hermaphrodite, which is a pure psychopath. It's not a soul from a metaphysical perspective. It is not a soul. Uh, like a regular gay person is maybe a soul in the wrong body, a feminine soul in a masculine body, or a masculine soul in a feminine body, or sometimes with a feminine, it's the female's the emulation of the female is stronger, and they couldn't find a man that was that, or the man was so strong they couldn't find something that emulated that strength of male that growing up. So there's different reasonings, different ways the soul. So just a regular gay person, that's whatever. But when you have the ones that are both uh, cluster B and they're gay or homosexual, gay used to mean happy. They just took that word and just too much and used liberosity or whatever. But the homosexual, that from a metaphysical perspective, is just a demon. So I'm not really a big fan of gay people. Bible is definitely, I have stated why, from a biblical perspective, why God destroyed Sodomites and the Gomorrites because of that, because they were demon possessed. And those particular, that's why also Sarah, when she looked back, she turned to a pillar of salt because she was longing. Um, the the because of their demonic entities, but at the same time, as Americans, every being has its rights, and the Constitution limits the rights of the cluster B personality. Sharia law, no, I'm not going to get into that on this one, but that's it gives the rights of the individual over because one thing about the cluster B is they don't view other people as separate from themselves, and that's why it was so easy for McRaven to go from one cluster B to the next cluster B because almost all the persons attacking is like they're all cluster Bs. Because anybody who wasn't a cluster B is like, oh, or wasn't so, especially psychopathic or narcissistic, borderline sometimes, but the ones who are completely psychopathic, they're they all think the same way because they actually even behave the same way. The language patterns are the exact same. It's quite hilarious. So, um, I, where was? Oh yeah, it's about the cluster bees, and so that's I hate when I have sometimes I get pictures going all over the place. Um, oh yeah, so they're constantly using the cluster bees to attack, and so you're going to see that today if it's not already been put out. And now if they hopefully they put it out, put that try. Oh yeah, because the cluster bees are demonic entities within a human soul. I mean, within a human vessel. That's my personal metaphysical position on it. So you can't really put that into like court of law. But as far as behavior, the behavior is always the exact same. That's why it's called the id externalized antagonistic personality. Um, so not the exact same, but it's fairly same. The main purpose is fairly the same. I just can describe it both as a clinical, regular, scientific way, and then a little more philosophical way. That's a little more different, metaphysical. So that's how I view that. And now, okay, now I'm back in Florida. So after we moved to my place in Grand Junction, bounced around Grand Junction for a while, trying to go whatever. Get down to Florida. I just need some time. Can't get any time. He's working with my brother. My brother and my sister-in-law. My brother believes he's going to get the house. He's getting my house I grew up in. He's going to get it. My sister-in-law's been stealing, taking stuff from my sister and I her entire life. She's ruined my life. My sister was able, eventually able to have a great life, but my sister-in-law just really messed up a lot of different things, and she stole our brother from us. And because there's a family archetype we that is we my sister and I would go on, when my brother used to go on, but it's he doesn't. So the powers that be, the because my brother's a different father than me. So once they found out that we were related to the royal family, they were going to use my brother and sister, my brother and my sister-in-law, to my brother and his wife. I want nothing to do with her, and his wife, to be the royal for, poor Black Americans, because they were, so that way they could control Black Americans, and we can't have that, because that would also weaken Lady Markle's position, weaken my position, which is the purpose of it. Um, she was a gangbanger. She was or is, because there's not a removal unless you die. She was my brother's drug dealer. So that's the whole Beauty and the Beast. Well, my brother wasn't a beast as far as he's always a good dude. But it was this redemption story thing. They can pull some bullshit, blah blah. No, because that maintains the same pattern that destroyed Black American, and that was what's the purpose of it. My brother thinks he's going, like, he thinks right now, quote, letting me live here. He's just trying not to make himself look bad, and thinking he's going to reap rewards that are far greater than what he should, especially after stabbing me in the back. Uh, with the mechanics between him and McRaven, McRaven ended up killing uh, the the secretary of the lodge. I was not the secretary himself, but the family, two family members of the secretary of the lodge I was part of, so that way you could try to find the paperwork of where I was accepted, freely and accepted. And my brother was part of that, so he can never, him and his wife can, and kids, and I by decree say that they could never be anywhere near the royal family. And if King Charles tries to play some crap and bring them up, well, because of their toxicity and the energy such that brings about, that will bring about the destruction of the crown of of Great Britain, and I can't allow that to happen, and I have the authority to make sure that does not happen, and will use it. Um, my brother will be taken care of, but he's not going to be, because it's all about greed. He thinks he's going to, mainly his wife thinks she's entitled to my production. She's, we've had an argument about this before, and I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. The cracker you smoking, you fucking lazy shit. Um, uh, and the other thing is, from cultural perspective, Black American men have always been devalued because they control them through the absolutely abhorrent behavior of Black American women, and that's why of the um, what's it called, the crime bill. It was a feature to destroy the Black American family and the Hispanic families. It wasn't a bug. That was the purpose of it. Now, what they're mainly afraid of me right now is rallying people in my way, not with them, not with McRaven and the Dominionist kind of trying to control it, so that way they can come back and later say, "You only are able to do this because we allowed you to," so that way they can also then have the behavior. This is one of the other ways of manipulation of cluster bees. Is they always try to take uh, if you did something positive that they want, then they say it's them. They are the ones they think you don't have any free will. And I think there is. I know there is free will if you are aware. Your, your amount of will is free upon the dependent amount of awareness one has. So this is what they're trying to do to keep me from rallying veterans because they were trying to originally just try to attach me first to Black African Americans, and I was like, I was trying to help them, but Black Americans didn't want to march, mostly because they were using my sister-in-law, and they were using Jay Z. So, nigga, we ain't gonna do shit. We think we gonna just blah 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 blah, and this is what they always do, and they know that they would always be contrarian because they've been trained to do that. They've been trained over generations to shoot themselves in the foot, and so I always knew there was no. And two, like I said, I grew up American. So they're like, you ain't one of us. Well, and then I still have to deal with the same racism. I told you I'm not going to do stupid shit like you. Get over it. I'm going to go snowboarding. I'm going to go mountain biking. I'm going to go fucking go do cool shit. And we're seeing Black American men who didn't grow up in the hood, who are raising their kids to see the full bounty of America and to go enjoy that full bounty, doing the same thing. I was just 30 years ahead of my time. Well, it's like 50, well, see, because so it's not that big of a thing. I don't see anything. Now, I do understand. I remember when I was out in Wyoming when chick says, "Oh, you see them more outside the cities now," because basically the black communities are considered open air prisons by most European Americans, and they are treated as such. And that's also the reason behind why the big lie, because the big lie, the statement, the real truth of the big lie is this: it's an implied statement. The, it's the system's supposed to be rigged so they can't win. If they won, then they must have re-rigged it, and I'm going to re-rig it back. And Obama must have been corrupt because there's no way he could have won unless the system was rigged. So I'm going to re-rig it back. That was what Trump's message is to the bigots and European and the white nationalists. And then you have McRaven, but then they have the white nationalists in the Democratic Party because these oligarchs are playing both sides to get their um, is it called unitary executive? That's dictator like Viktor Orban, illiberal democracy, um, i.e., dictator and autocracy. And President Biden is walking right into some of these traps. We saw last December where uh, Chuck Schumer, leader of the Senate Democrats, this is right around the time where Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked because of the fervor of what's going on, and instead of you know letting me go do my thing so I could rally people to bring them to Washington to do what we need to do, McRaven convinced Schumer, and which is funny because Schumer just walked right into uh, the old anti-Semitic trope: the Jew will never do the right thing when it's time to do the right thing, and time to do the right thing, he didn't do the right thing. Instead, he, just told Nancy Pelosi, "Oh, we'll just use him to get elected, and we'll just sit there and we'll just keep hammering him." Ha ha ha. And it wasn't mostly because, and he said what I was talking about was radical, and I was like, if that was the real reason, I could have kind of like, okay, I can understand that, but that wasn't the real reason. The main reason that Schumer did that is his ego. He put his super ego over the Constitution because he's the worst type, of polite bigot. At least, the polite bigot's the one who goes, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm not really that racist, but you're not supposed to be smart. You're not supposed to be intelligent. You're not supposed to have your own free will. You're not supposed to. So if you have those things, something's wrong with you too." But I'm not going to be as virulent as like Jeff Sessions in the way they are in the South, and that's why Schumer pulled that number last December. In many ways, that's kind of also what Joe Biden did back in the 90s when he voted for the crime bill as a senator. But at least he's trying to make amends. The only person who did not, who's still in the Senate, is Bernie Sanders. And he said, this is what's going to happen. And it was like, duh, that's what we do. That's the game, Bernie. We play the black folks to control the white folks. Everything within black American culture is inverted. I was at a hookah bar the other day, and I'm listening in the country music, and it's something I've always noticed, but it was all everything was chill, everything was mellow. The music was about life, positive things. Then you start playing black African American music, it's all the id, about sex, being cool, but it's all lower self. And so they're never reinforced with positive vibrations of a higher self, or very rarely does one of such an artist get through. That's why they have Jay-Z. That's why they made it let him be rich. So people start keep continuously emulating his behavior. They don't want him emulating, they don't want black African Americans emulating me. And that's why they're trying to do all the whole put me with the transvestites and the gays. And it's like, no, I'm a heterosexual male who's a very type A, and I'm pretty mellow, but I have no qualms of kicking your ass. And I will. And that's the main reason that they've been attacking me. Because what I represent: hard work, discipline, competence, intelligence, honor of self. Yeah, I'm not perfect, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm much of a jackass as the next person, but it's no more of a jackass than what you would see like on the TV show Yellowstone or something. That's a threat to their bullshit. And now conferred with a royal title of the British, of the United Kingdom and Great Britain, plus being an American citizen, that's terrifying. Because they can't stop it. I've never held office. I've never been an officer of the United States of America. And I will not accept an office until the finishment of conference by King Charles. Because they're trying to falsely place, create the Knight of the Republic or a coach or and make that an office, and then I get the office, McRae would pull that one out, and then I would have to then get to Congress, and then they would control Congress, and I would never be able to get the uh, the dukedom, which is necessary to protect my investments and to make sure that they're royal. That's the other reason she conferred the dukedom, to protect her investment. So, anyways, this is what's gone on. It's very long. I know he's an investigators. This is mostly under the assumption that you will, if you don't have enough data because it's all online, you will come to me and I will then sit down and fill in the blanks. Thank you very much for your service, gentlemen and ladies. I'll speak to you soon.